Welcome to Delightfully Dysfunctional, a podcast about navigating the emotions of the human condition and the challenges that come with it. I'm Kaylani Persian Mason, a psychotherapist and life coach with James Timmons, an ever-curious human. This is not a replacement for mental health therapy. Please seek out mental health care if that's what you're needing. This is an opportunity for self-healers to dive deep and understand more about themselves. Welcome back to Delightfully Dysfunctional. I'm Kaylani, and I'm thrilled today to share with you someone who I met at a training, and I've gotten to soak up all her little wisdoms through her Instagram, herbal_MD. I have Dr. Stephanie Colantonio, who is an integrative physician and is focused on holistic approaches. She incorporates herbalism, mindfulness, ketamine-assisted therapy, and just really tries to treat the whole person in her practice to best serve her patients. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you. I love this little
Yes,
reunion.
I know, me too. It's so fun. And I get to have you all to myself to soak up your wisdom. It's such a treat.
Oh, thank you.
I'd love to know more. I like to get like some backstory and really understand a little bit more about you. And let's start with your journey into medicine and what first inspired you to become a doctor. Was it something you always wanted to do when you were a little girl?
No,
Mm.
it wasn't something that I always thought I would do. In undergrad, I majored in psychology and I also did pre-med because I love science. I liked working with people. And so I sort of had those two areas of focus. And even after graduating college, I wasn't 100% sure that I would go into medicine. I was still considering clinical psychology. And I worked at a research center for autism. And in that space, I really loved what the developmental pediatricians were doing.
Mm,
And so that sort of pushed me more towards medicine,
mm.
um, as opposed to psychology, therapy, things like that. And, you know, my whole sort of journey to how I got to where I am right now is a little bit non-linear.
Those are my favorite stories.
So the sort of Cliff Notes version of it is that I went to medical school and decided to do a residency in child neurology. And once I got into residency and was working, you do general pediatrics first and then neurology. I was just really burnt out. I was
Mm,
not happy. It was not the right fit for me. And like, thank goodness for the people who are still doing
yeah,
those
right.
areas of work, but it just wasn't the right fit. It
Mm,
wasn't for me. And so I went through this whole process of really exploring like, what do I want to
yeah,
do? Who do I want to serve? I reread my personal statements over and over again. Like, how did I get here? And
right. I'd imagine that this was a bit of a challenging time when you look back, perhaps, of like, well, I've invested so much. I think I saw was it your undergrad or your medical school was at Yale and investing so much time and energy and then feeling so burnt out and like, where do I go from here?
yeah, absolutely. I did my undergrad, so I studied psychology in undergrad at Yale,
Mhm.
and then I went to medical school in New York.
Mm.
And exactly that. It's sort of the investment of time and
Yeah.
energy, the financial investment of
Yeah.
what do I do? Um, and just sort of going back to those personal statements, it showed me both of them. I talked about the mind-body connection and how I thought
Mm.
it's really important. And I was realizing in the work I was doing in conventional medicine, I wasn't really able to get to that intersection with patients. You just don't have time in the
Mm.
system the way it is, which, yeah, like exactly that expression, it sucks. Uh,
Right. I think so many people in the medical field, they go into it for such those like pure intentions and really wanting to help, and then the system sucks them dry and
yeah,
doesn't serve
definitely.
either the heart of the healer nor the patient.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, um, you know, I took quite a bit of time off during the pandemic, which
Mm.
really gave me space to be quiet and to sort of reflect on what I wanted to do. And that's where sort of how I came into holistic or integrative medicine is really being able to have more time with people and to address the whole person. So not just the physical aspects, but mental, spiritual, emotional. And that's a sort of brief way of how I got to here.
I love that. I love that you mentioned spiritual too, as that being such a part of us that I think we often dissect or remove. And to hear that from a physician, really bringing that into the mix, I think is it's just really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And it's interesting because I remember in residency there would be, sort of modules or things that we would talk about in terms of patient spirituality. But for me, it felt so focused on religion and my experience is that spirituality is so much more, and you may not identify with religion, and it's still an important part of your healing and process and everything.
Yeah. So there's this transition from Western medicine to a more holistic approach, and that sparks a question for me as well when it comes to just like the type of medicine that you were raised with. What was life like as you were growing up in the norm when it came to medicine and how you were treated?
It's such a good question. I grew up in Boston, which is,
Mm.
a very scientific community. You have lots of universities, there's lots of academia. My mother was a nurse, she's retired now. And in our family, there was really nothing of holistic or integrative
Mm.
medicine. It was very conventional. And so I really hadn't been exposed to other ways of approaching healing and health. And really, one of the biggest sort of spark points for me was during residency when I was really struggling.
Mhm.
I thought, I'm gonna, like, something bad's gonna happen. I was taking medicine for headaches every day. I was so burnt out. And so I said, I want to try something different. I had never been exposed or tried traditional Chinese medicine before. And I don't know what it was, but there was something that I was like, I think I need to try that. And
Mm.
so I started seeing a practitioner here in LA who was just fantastic. And I really committed to going once a week. I remember exactly, I was working in the neonatal ICU. It was so stressful. My one day off was like, I'm going to acupuncture. And after 6 weeks of taking Chinese herbs and going to acupuncture, nothing changed in my environment, but I didn't need to take these drugs anymore for headaches and things like that. And so I was like, okay, they know something that we don't know.
Yeah. So there was this huge spark that happened as you were healing yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. Boy, there's so many times I can reflect on now where there was such high stress or an incongruence in the way that my life was unfolding with what I was really feeling inside and the corresponding health things that came up.
Totally.
And I think it's really interesting from this like point of hindsight to be able to view that. And I think that's the a beautiful gift that you're able to illuminate for people as an understanding of how like we humans we're complex and there's an interweaving of all these parts.
Definitely. Like you cannot separate the psycho-spiritual, the psycho-emotional from the physical. And like our bodies will tell us when things aren't right.
Yeah. And you have also mentioned and described your approach as incorporating folk medicine. And I'd really love to know more about what that is, because that's an unfamiliar term for me. And how would you define folk medicine? Because this is a part of that holistic approach.
Yeah, so I trained in folk herbalism, and so my background in folk medicine it's specific to
Mhm.
herbalism through a school called School of the Sacred Wild. My teacher's name is Marisha Murnowska. She's fantastic. It's a really wonderful community. And folk herbalism really refers to um, the way that we cultivate a relationship with nature
Mm,
and really focusing on reciprocity and relationship building. So,
mm,
you know, I also consider myself a clinical herbalist, and we really think about, like what are the medicinal properties of a given plant, right? That's more to sort of clinical herbalism. When we think about folk herbalism, yes, we do consider those
mhm,
things around, like what are the medicinal properties, but also like how do we build a relationship with a plant? How do we
mm.
show reverence to a plant? How do we live in regenerative ways that are also giving back to those entities, those beings, the plants that are giving us so much. So really these sort of circular relationships. And folk herbalism, it really is rooted in different cultural traditions. So the way that my teacher really approaches a lot is from more Western European or Eastern European traditions and cultures. And, but you also might have folk herbalism from Mexico and having their cultural footprint and impact on the way that they approach working with plants as medicine.
Yeah, I mean, even in hearing your description, it's really infusing the spiritual back into that process, all of it.
Definitely, definitely. And it's so much about relationship. And, one of the sayings that I think is really helpful for us to keep in mind, that I did not make this up, I heard it from a number of places, but plants are not pills.
Mm.
It's, you can buy encapsulated powders of different plants for different ailments or things that you're trying to treat. But we don't really want to just sort of be popping plants like pills. Yes, like take the herbal capsules, but also really think about like where is this plant coming from? What is the personality of this plant? Can I take 5 minutes of pause when I'm either drinking the tea or taking the capsule to notice like how do I feel? What's happening and changing in me as I'm interacting with this plant?
Yeah, it's a real invitation for mindfulness, is what I'm hearing too.
Yeah.
Like as you're describing that, I'm like, yeah, I'm picturing like the leaf capturing the energy from the sun and like it infusing those elements, all these aspects of earth and nature that went into the process of creating, this herbal supplement for people.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And how what are ways that is integrated into your practice? Because I actually just saw a post, I think it might have been today, that you made of your cabinet of all of your different goodies. And it was like it was a lot. And I was just like, whoa, I don't even I have all these questions. What is all of this? What are some of the what are some of the maybe main herbs, if that's even a valid question to ask? Like, what are the most like useful maybe that you find yourself sharing with people?
Totally. So, I'll sort of start with how I incorporate herbs. I just moved apartments, and so I finally got all of my herb jars all set up, and that brings me so much peace and
Their
calming.
home, yeah.
They're there and they're all settled. And when working with patients or clients or students, you know, I always will give herbal recommendations. And the part of why working with herbs is so helpful is because they really can address the whole person in different ways. You can choose plants based on what they're going to do for the physical body. You can choose plants based on their relationship with the emotional, spiritual, just like I was saying before, like all of these different parts of ourselves. And you can find ways to integrate herbs to help with all of those things. And so I almost always recommend some kind of daily infusion to people. And then also, in terms of depending on what we're working on, does someone have heavy menstrual bleeding? Do they have painful periods? What are the different things that we're treating? And so, in terms of like a most common herb or most useful, I really can't answer that
Oh, that was
because
a complicated one I threw at
yeah,
you.
it's just
I want a magic herb, basically. Give me the magic one.
it's just so, and this is also the beauty of it, and why I love it so much is that it's so individualized from person to person.
Yeah.
There's no one size fit all because none of us and none of the plants are one size fit all. And so, when working with people, there are general categories of plants that I think about. So, for example, there's nourishing herbs that are packed with vitamins and minerals and
Mm.
nutrients. There are adaptogenic herbs that are really helpful for the stress response, and so really working on the adrenal cortisol systems. Um, and so depending on what's going on with someone, we're also going to use those different categories of herbs to help us decide what's best for them.
Yeah, so the whole process is really um, getting to spend some really quality time with each patient and understanding them as this whole person, and then mapping out what might be able to fit those needs based on these properties of the herbs that you have.
Yeah, definitely. And we also, we do incorporate concepts from traditional forms of healing, like traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, and really looking at the energetics and the constitution of someone. So we're going to think about, is someone run really dry or really moist, really hot
Mm.
or really cold? And those types of characteristics, like if you go to see an acupuncturist, they're always thinking in this way. But those sorts of things we're also going to incorporate when we're making decisions.
I feel like you've actually already sold me on acupuncture from this conversation already. I'm like, yeah, I want to schedule an appointment for my husband and I to get some acupuncture done.
I refer so many of my patients, almost all of my patients, to at least consider it if it's something that feels interesting to them. Because it is,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh, I think it's so very cool. And then you've incorporated ketamine assisted therapy into your work as well.
mhm.
So I want to know more about how that process has been for you, and some of the things that you find yourself helping people navigate through that work.
Definitely. And so that's where we met, which is very
Yes, it was
exciting.
great. It was such a
Um,
powerful and magical experience, and it's so nice to maintain those connections with people from that training.
yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that my road to getting to offering ketamine assisted psychotherapy, like for so many other people, really started with my own journey. I started working with psychedelic assisted medicine. Actually, my first year of residency, when I was also really struggling, I was working more with plant medicines and was introduced to them and really just had such profound and healing experiences that supported me so much. And have been invaluable and so important also in my sort of journey and process of, leaving conventional medicine and seeking more holistic offerings. Eh, My experiences with psychedelic medicine really helped push me and also sort of I felt like supported my courage in leaving something that felt really hard to leave and starting something new that felt really scary.
Courage
Um,
was the word that was on my mind as you were sharing, because even yeah, like even as I'm still continuing to do that, it's like you're coming out of the closet of like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm a holistic practitioner, surprise.
Yeah, and it's really, I think that we all go through our own journeys of wondering if people are going to judge us or, because you're doing something different and
Yeah.
then sort of always coming back to, well, what is my truth and what do I know to be true
Mhm.
about me? And and psychedelic medicine has been incredibly helpful for that. So
Yeah.
I think that was 2017, and since then continued to work with plant medicine with varying degrees of regularity.
Right.
And it's funny, one of my dear friends who's worked for MAPS for over a decade, she was for several years, she was always kind of pushing me, like, Steph, I really think that you should do training. I think you should train to be a practitioner. And I would keep telling her, like, one day, yes, I'm still working through my own stuff right now.
Mm.
Like, I have my own things that I'm really like
Right.
sort of in the muck of, that I don't feel like I'm in the place to hold space for
Mm.
someone else who's also going through that muck. Um, and then a couple of summers ago, it was like a switch flipped, and it was like,
Mm.
you know what? I'm in the right place right now where I do feel like I have capacity to hold space for others, because my muck is like, it's sort of calming down, like I'm dealing with that
Hmm.
stuff. And
And I mean,
so,
even in the process of the going through your own muck, as you say, it's like you're a student of the medicine in that. And I think it's the ethical way to go about it, really, is to let yourself experience any medicine that you're going to provide. And so there was a lot of learning and growth. And I mean, you were in the process, whether you realized it or not.
totally, totally. And I think that that's what it felt like for me. It didn't feel right to be offering something when I was still like needing to offer it to myself.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, some sort a flip switched, and it was like, okay, you're ready. And so I reached out to Lauren Taus, who we did our training with, and decided to go to training. And it was interesting because I hadn't personally worked with ketamine as a medicine at that point. I had mostly worked with plant medicines, and I kind of went into it with a little bit of trepidation. I was like, I'm an herbalist. I work with psychedelic plant medicine. Like, I don't know about this ketamine stuff.
Right, right. Now it's almost like a reversal, right? Like, conventional medicine. I don't know about you.
And it was like, in my herbalism school, we learn how to connect to the spirits of plants. And like, how do I connect to the spirit of this
Chemical.
fuel,
Right.
this chemical? And so I kind of, in all honesty, went into the training thinking, let me go into this with an open mind. I'm not totally set on whether or not I'm going to offer this, but let me at least see what it's like. And as you know, our training was experiential, where we all had opportunities to both sit with the medicine and sit for someone as a support person. And I was just really impressed and blown away by the experience when done in a really intentional and therapeutic and safe container, and how impactful it was for all of us who joined in the training. And so I'm so glad that I did do the training, because it really shifted my perspective. It opened my narrowness on it. And I was like, yes, I do want to be someone who has this as a possibility for people who feel like it could be helpful for them.
Ah. I love it. So it inspired some like wonder into this option. And I wonder if there's a case, maintaining confidentiality, of course, where you really saw ketamine therapy create a profound transformation for a patient.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so one thing I'll say is as a physician, I'm
Mhm.
not trained as a therapist, and so I work in collaboration with therapists. And so I may sit with someone for a ketamine medicine session, and we start the integration process together. And then they'll meet with their therapist in a couple
Mhm.
of days to continue the integration process, which we all know is so important. And So that's
Some
just a
of those
little.
tidbits the therapist might get, and you might not get the full download of what happens afterwards, then, is part of what you're sharing.
Well, just to say that I'm not, I'm with them for like that
Mhm.
when they're first coming out of the medicine,
Yeah.
and then, they sort of fill me in on how things go with the therapist. But just to say that it's a collaborative approach. Um, and I mean, I can think of many transformational experiences that patients have had, it's sort of cliche now, but you hear people say, and they really do say it over again. They're like, I feel like those last 4 sessions of ketamine were, offered me more insight and
Mm,
relief than the last 5 years of regular conventional therapy. And these are people who might be on multiple psychiatric medications and they're just not feeling relief from their depression, their anxiety, their symptoms of PTSD. And with these sessions, they really are able to work through some of their own muck in these safe,
mhm.
supportive environments. Um, where the medicine really allows them to go into places that they might not be able to access otherwise. So
Yeah.
huge transformations in anxiety and depression. I think also like another reason why people will reach out is if they are experiencing the need for more support around psycho-spiritual questions. Do I want to bring another child into our family? My child just left for college. I have an empty nest and I'm having trouble reconnecting to my identity. So
Mm,
these sort of big questions. I've also seen a lot of beautiful work around those too with this
mm.
medicine.
Yeah, there can be such a depth of insight when some of our more loud, critical parts kind of soften and get a little
Mhm.
sleepy for that moment that the medicine is working. And I really see clients being able to engage with therapy with a different kind of depth, which is really where the benefit is found.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my area, I am one of two ketamine assisted therapists, and I just am wanting so many people to jump on the bandwagon. So when you consider medical professionals who might feel skeptical or hesitant about psychedelic assisted therapies, what would you want them to know?
Wow. A lot of things. I think one is it's really hard to be judgmental about something that you haven't experienced yet. And so I think that um, keeping in mind that psychedelic medicine is not for everyone and just being
Mhm.
really conscious of that, just acknowledging that if you have not experienced something yourself or have not worked with someone who has had direct experience with this, then it's like, how can you be judgmental of it, right? I think that this field, it feels like it's been booming over the last decade or less.
Right.
And so there's a lot of research to catch up, but there is also a lot of research showing like amazing benefits of these
Mhm.
medicines. And so I think for clinicians who are suspicious or maybe hesitant or whatever the resistance is I would just encourage them to do their homework. So, like look at the MAPS website and see what kind of research has been going on, what's been done, what's being done. Check out PubMed. There's a lot of articles, from a science standpoint. And then also to really ask yourself, what is my why am I so resistant to this? So
Mhm.
self-exploration around like why do I have this tension? Why am I so against this? And really looking into that themselves.
Yeah, great. I love those questions of self-exploration that you threw in there. And for anyone who isn't aware, when we're referencing MAPS, we're referencing the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. There we go. It's such a mouthful.
Yeah.
But MAPS is doing all of the trials and the research and has so much good information as they really try to expand education and research into these medicines.
Yeah.
Um, you, I'm wondering, it's again, this might be a bigger question. Like I wanted my magic herb that would fix all the things, but when it comes to just some simple and powerful holistic wellness practices that you find yourself often recommending to your patients, what comes up for you? I'm wondering if it might even mirror some of the things that I might recommend because so often there's like simple solutions at times for alleviating things that ail us all.
Definitely. And I think like the first thing is to really go back to what, like you mentioned, simple. The word is simple. Like, what are the foundations of our health? What are the pillars of our health? And so, and I'll say to patients too, when we're talking about it, I'm like, I know this sounds really simple, but it's actually so important. How are you sleeping? Are
Mm.
you sleeping?
Yeah.
What are you eating? What's going into your body? How are you eating? What's your relationship to food? What's your relationship to preparing food and cooking? So like really how which is is a piece of a bigger question of how are you nourishing yourself? And nourishment comes in the form of food, it comes in the form of rest and sleep. It comes in the form of joy, like what fills you
Mm.
up, like yeah, like what just fills your
Yeah.
cup. Um, are you moving your body? Like what does movement look like for you? What is your community support? Can we take a step back and look at, like who do you have for support? Who are your friends or your family
Mm.
around that you can turn to? Because that, we're social creatures. That's so important. Um, and so it's really going back to these foundations of health, the sort of back to the basics. And then if someone tells me, I'm doing all of those things, right? Like I'm checking all the boxes and I
Yeah.
still don't feel well. It's like, okay, well, now let's go from the really simple and then let's try to get more creative. But most of the time, there are things that people can tweak. We live in such a fast-paced world that stress around work and career and work-life balance is huge. I can't tell you how many people will come describing chronic fatigue. We do all their labs, everything looks great, their physical exam is great. They're working 80 hours a week, like me in
Mm.
residency, and a job that they hate. And it's like, of course, if you're spending most of your energy and waking hours doing something that you don't like, you're going to be exhausted, even if you're in tip-top health shape. And so
Yeah.
exploring, like, is it time for me to consider a change in the way I approach work?
Oh, that's such an important wonder right there because I think often we expect our bodies to operate like a robot, like we just power through and we dismiss those things. And those are that incorporating again that holistic perspective. Like these are spiritual questions to be asking yourself, like where do your passions actually lie? You can't
Yeah.
force yourself to be in a situation that is not allowing you to really be who you are at your core or limits you.
Definitely, definitely. And I think a really good example of this that's coming to mind is as you're describing that is I remember when I was deciding to quit child neurology, which was such a challenging decision to make. I never quit anything in my life. I was like very much achievement, like do all the things. You say you're going to do something, you get it done. Anyway, first time I really quit something. And I felt a lot of guilt around it. I felt some shame around it. And I remember talking to one of the other child neurology fellows who was just fantastic. She was so compassionate. And she was saying, Steph, like this is a really hard job. And if it doesn't fill you up, you cannot do it.
Mm.
Like it's really hard for me too, but it does fill me up. And so
Yeah.
there's a different energetics there. So for that particular doctor, like she was like, yeah, this is hard for me too. And it fills my cup. It's hard for you and it's depleting your cup. So, like, and that was important for me to acknowledge, like, I don't have to be the same as that other person.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that they were able to share that for you too, because it was a someone that you looked up to and you
Mhm.
had worked with in that field. And I think there's power when it's coming from that perspective,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Kind of wanting to understand as well another element of your practice that I it seems is a big focus of yours and another passion is really like reproductive health and hormonal balance.
Yeah.
So, would you say the majority of your patients are female?
Yes, definitely. I'm primarily are female or female identifying.
Hmm.
Um, when I took time off to really think about, what did I want to do and who did I want to serve? And I was thinking about, patients that I was seeing as a general pediatrician. I really loved working with the young women who are about to transition out of pediatrics. So like 21, 22 years old, really young adults at that point. And I really I think from like a level of connection, I loved working with them, but then also was just really interested in the issues that they were bringing up. So, for example, in residency, I might have a young adult who's having horrible menstrual pain. And really, the only tool in our toolbox that we're given in conventional medicine was hormonal contraception, ibuprofen, heating pad. That's it. And I remember just feeling really badly because I'd have patients saying, I don't want to go on the pill. I don't want to take ibuprofen, but those are the only options. And so I started to get really interested in, well, okay, what are other fields of health? How are they approaching this? So how are naturopaths approaching menstrual pain? How are traditional Chinese medicine doctors approaching this? Because their approaches, while not everything might be randomized controlled trial studied, they work.
They're
People get
effective.
better.
Yeah.
And so I started to get really interested in like just learning a lot more about what are the other options. Menstrual pain, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, a
Mhm.
lot of things that have been so understudied as so much in women's or reproductive health is. I think the other component of that, again, like with so many of these things and these passion projects, is my own experience. You know,
Yeah.
I had an abortion when I was 16, which was a really challenging experience. And from that point on, was placed on different types of hormonal contraception, IUDs. And for whatever reason, my body did not respond well to any of these. I had awful side effects. And I was on these things for like a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that with also acknowledging there are plenty of people who go on these forms of contraception who have no problems at all.
Right.
And awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Bodies like mine and other people's who we just don't respond well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so really wanting to learn more about how we can support people around contraception, ending pregnancies, things like that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that vulnerable share too. And I think it's I don't know, when someone's heart for their work really ties in their personal experience, that's where passion is born. And
Mhm.
if someone's wanting to work with a provider, you want to find a passionate one. And so your passion is really shining through and it's fun to see and learn about.
Thank
And yeah, and I've been lucky not to have painful periods, but I've seen my friends and it is debilitating. Like it is it just to consider going through that much pain every month, it breaks my heart for women who have that experience.
Hmm.
And personally, having like, there was a time when I was on a birth control that had just been switched and found myself in the deepest depression ever. I couldn't recognize myself. I couldn't get out of bed. It wasn't me. And it took me longer than it took me like several months before I even realized that was the thing.
Definitely. And it's really frustrating because there are clinicians and physicians who do acknowledge these side effects of these medications, and then there's some who really write it off. And it's frustrating because there's research shows, depression, um, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is sort of a more intense version of PMS. These are known side effects, possible side effects of the pill, for example. And it's really, and this happened to me when I was in my early 20s and I was having really, like, really not fun mood shifts.
Yeah.
And I remember going to my doctor and saying, I think this is related to the pill. I want to try something different. And she said, well, why don't you stay on the pill and we'll give you an SSRI? And I said,
Mm,
in my head, I was like, that might be an option, like a reasonable option for someone, but I'm like, that's not it for me.
yeah, you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also like I'm very I want to be thoughtful about the way we talk about things like contraception and the pill and things like that. Because again, for some people, it's an awesome option.
Right.
For a lot of us, it really sucks. And by the way, I did end up going off of the pill at that time. And when I went off, my mood issue, it was like a veil lifted, a fog lifted. I was like, I feel so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just been after I had my daughter, I got an IUD and I think it's been about a year now that I've had it out and I was trying to just like naturally track my cycle. And it's like for the first time since being a teenager, I'm getting reacquainted with my cycle. And I'm
Mhm.
like, whoa, I don't follow the normal cycle at all. I have like a 40-day cycle and like where I'm ovulating isn't like makes sense with what it seems to it all. And it's just really interesting as someone who's like, I'm in my late 30s and I'm just now getting acquainted with that part of my body.
Totally, totally. And that's a really common um, experience for people to share. And, when I talk to people about cycle tracking, like you're talking about, we talk about how it can be useful if you're trying to prevent pregnancy, if you're trying to get pregnant.
Mhm.
And then also, if you just want, just like you just talked about, want more information about your menstrual cycle and menstrual health, it can give you so much by tracking those different pieces of it. And when I've done workshops around menstrual health, fertility, things like that, it's also common. Someone will say, I'm in my mid 30s and no one ever taught me this, but like, why aren't we taught this in school?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Very
there's so many
sweet.
things that
It's
we
very,
haven't
go ahead.
no, we just haven't been passing it down. And I think there's been a gap generationally where we've just, here's the solve, here's the quick solve.
Totally. And it's very like a lot of these things are very basic biology. Like you don't need to go to medical school or be a science person to understand them. It's sort of basic stuff.
Yeah. So in your exploration of your own health answers and becoming curious again about herbalism and Chinese medicine and these other uh, paths to treat some of the symptoms you were experiencing, what things did you learn when it comes to maybe herbs to help stabilize mood around that time of the month or strategies to help with pain?
Definitely. So I think for me, what was really helpful was learning about the different phases of the menstrual cycle. And so understanding that as our hormones shift over the course of about a month or 40 days in your case, as our hormones are shifting, that is also impacting us holistically. That's impacting our mood, it's impacting our cognition, it's impacting our energy and physical experience. And so starting to get in tune with those different phases of the menstrual cycle. So we sort of break it down into menstruation, follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, and they have different energies. And so understanding like instead of being go, go, go 24/7, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year,
Mhm.
is noticing, oh, wow, like I'm really tired. I'm going to start bleeding soon. Maybe this is not the time for me to do a strenuous exercise. Maybe
Mm.
I should rest because I'm tired. Maybe I should eat really nourishing, yummy, easy to digest foods because I'm tired. Um,
Mm.
and also paying attention, when you're feeling much more energetic and sort of, typically during the follicular phase or ovulation is when we generally have more energy. And again, this is not a hard and fast rule, but in general. And so harnessing that too, like, okay, maybe I'm going to be more social this week because I feel like I have the capacity to. So I think tuning into the phases of the cycle is a really helpful thing.
Yeah, you're already making me think more about, I'm like my eyes are like, huh, yeah, I need to add in more elements to this tracking that I'm doing and consider those things. And it also has me considering um I don't know, like my own perfectionism that I'm always keeping in check.
Mhm.
What a way to have this much more holistic approach to understanding yourself instead of again that go-go nature of society and what we think we should be doing. It's not forgiving to or considering of like no, you have a body and it's doing a thing and that's just the way it is. Maybe we should understand it.
Definitely. Definitely. And then, like in terms of approaches, so that's sort of the first thing is just getting to know our bodies better and listening to our bodies as we get to know them. And then we do think about, more specific treatments like with herbs. Again, we're going to think about different classes of herbs depending on what's going on for someone. So if someone has really bad cramps, we're going to think about antispasmodic herbs. So herbs are going to relax smooth muscle. So for example, chamomile, St. John's wort. These are all going to help sort of relax things a little bit more. If someone is like feels really anxious or irritable around their period, thinking about some of the different nervine herbs that we have that really work to help calm the nervous system. So there's, again, it really depends on what's going on for someone, but thinking about like what's happening for this person, what's going on in their life, and
Mm.
what sort of classes of herbs might be most helpful for them.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about holistic medicine?
Oh, I mean, I think like I remember hearing in the workroom in residency, people referring to holistic practitioners as like quacks and things like
Hmm.
that. Like really not nice names.
Right.
And I think part of the issue is it's such a vague term,
Mm.
um, that what I mean when I say I practice holistic medicine is very different from what someone
Mm.
else might mean when they say they
Yeah.
practice holistic medicine. So I think really acknowledging that there's such a wide range of definitions. So that can make it hard to understand, like, what is it? Because
Mm.
there's so many different ways to interpret it. I think that there is a misconception that just because something is not evidence-based,
Mm.
that it can't be useful or helpful. I think that that's a really narrow perspective of conventional medicine. And of course, we want to be mindful about, safety and cost effectiveness and accessibility for people, of course. And evidence-based practices help us do those things, but it doesn't mean they're the only answer. So I think uh, like opening a narrow view.
Yeah, yeah. Don't use the evidence-based practices as a reason to, cut out all of these other good options.
Mhm.
And with everything that you're sharing, it's been so fun to get to know you better. And my next question is really wanting to know, now that I've understood, especially this journey that you've come through of discovery and self-discovery and curiosity and personal healing to this point in your practice and in your work, what is the most rewarding part of what you do right now?
Mm. I mean, some of the ways that people express their relief and just sort
Mm,
of I think for me, like one of the like the word peace comes to mind. It's like how do we get people closer to peace or harmony within themselves, within their relationships? And when we're experiencing something like depression or a chronic health illness, we're a lot of times we're not able to feel in harmony with ourselves a lot of the time. And
yes.
so um when patients share with me um the way that they're feeling, that shows that they're sort of coming back to a place of peace within
Mm,
themselves. Like I met with someone today and they said that I could share this because it just really
mm,
touched me. And they said that I could share it. They've been doing CAP and they were, we were talking about how things are going. This is someone who does their CAP with their therapist. And we were just checking in, and they said, um, I feel a shift in my ability to feel compassion for myself, and that they have always had a strong belief system around how we should treat each other as humans. And they're acknowledging, but like I'm one of those humans too that deserves that compassion. And
mm.
I deserve my own compassion. And for me, like that's the
That's
best.
huge. Yeah.
Right? Like bringing people back to the self-love, self-compassion, and
Mm,
more of a place of peace within themselves.
that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so that's such a vessel of such change and like internal change and a shift in the relationship with yourself where like, I think in our society in the way that evolutionarily speaking we're just programmed to be looking for negative bias. It's easy for us to be such jerks to ourselves. Like that self-talk
Oh,
can be right, it's never
totally.
anything we would say to any other person, but then
Hmm.
we let it live rampant in our mind.
Totally.
So for someone to come to that understanding through the work of ketamine assisted therapy and your guidance as well as their therapist, that's that right. It feels like such a rewarding thing to be a part of,
Mhm.
letting someone come back to their wholeness.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me too, I'm so grateful for the different people who have supported me in getting
Mm,
to those places and to those states, that it feels like such an important thing to be able to pay it forward and to be able to support someone else with it as well.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited about all the things that you're doing. I wish I lived in California now. And I'm wondering if there's any any ways that people can find you or anything that you'd like to share with our listeners so they know how to connect to learn more about your work?
Yeah, definitely. So the website has a lot of information about the way I work with people. And so that's colantonio.md.com. And so my last name, md.com. Um, Instagram can also be a great place, herbal underscore MD.
Yes, I wrote it down before we started. Herbal underscore MD.
So those are some great places, and then sending me an email is great if people have questions or just want to chat about something.
Yeah, I'll make sure that those links are in the description of the episode as well. And thank you so much, Stephanie. I got to learn about so many aspects of you and where your heart is for your work and for your patients. And it's been such a joy. And I can just tell that all of the people that work with you, they're lucky ducks because you put a lot of heart into what you do.
Thank you. It was really fun to talk with you, and I appreciate all of your questions.
Yes. Oh, so fun to see your face again. Oh, thank you so much, Delightful Humans, for tuning in to this episode of Delightfully Dysfunctional. And you can find more of our content on YouTube or wherever you stream podcasts. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.